Welcome back to Incremental, the Continuous Improvement Podcast. This is our practice edition where we talk about improvements we've made during the week and tie them back to lean principles, and kind of try to show the process of implementing some of these complicated, often contradictory ideas, and where the rubber meets the road and kind of the discomfort and learning that happens along the way.
In practice, as it is.
As it were. I am Uriel Eisen from Austere Manufacturing.
I am Devin Bedoni of Lichen Precision.
And you got a quote?
Yeah. The moment of experience is the firmest reality.
Benjamin Borat.
Oh, yeah. I always miss that part. Sorry. Just
Sorry, Benjamin.
Trying to let the quote sink in.
Benjamin's probably dead, but I don't actually know.
Yeah. Once again, harping on the actually doing things.
Yes.
Note. Actually testing things. Not just imagining. Seems to be important.
Very important. Again, I feel like I've mentioned this, but I feel like I made a career of doing things, and sometimes I felt kind of stupid because people would be like planning and being like, well, what if this and what if that and this other thing and the other thing, and then you go and build something and it kind of sucks. Almost. I mean, generally V1 is not what you were hoping it would be.
Yeah.
But the faster you get to V1, it's so clarifying and helpful, and I think it's easier to look smart in a funny way by talking than it is by doing, and that is not a great incentive.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like I've been on teams and at jobs where there's these big, like, we all get a fancy conference room and we all get in there because we're the decision makers and we're smart and we can make a whole plan. And it's like, why are we doing, like, get out there and try it.
I think it is partially just people's impatience. And it's like, if you're going to, like, you will look smarter by doing things, but it will be delayed. Right? When you all meet to make a plan.
Yeah.
If somebody can, like, say something very intriguing and, like, charismatic,
right,
they look smart now. And you can be like, I'm going to test this. And everybody's like, cool. Your smartness quotient is delayed until you test it to be yes or wrong, because that's what our focus is on.
Yeah.
Or true or false. And so I think it's like we have a bad incentive to figure it out right now instead of later.
True. I also think that there is very rarely anything glamorous about doing anything, and the glamour is in the result, in like a cumulative result. But as you're saying, like, moment to moment, like getting a PhD, I don't think there's any moment that is like you have a crazy epiphany where suddenly you're like way more informed about a particular topic.
Yeah.
It's a lot of small, often boring, often inane tasks that stack up over time.
Yeah.
But if you sit there and theorize and talk about, like, I don't know, historical data, or you can feel, it feels more like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But then when you see a thing, nothing quite like it.
It is the firmest reality.
Yeah.
Speaking of actual reality, should we jump into some stuff? I had a few from last week that I just carried over, which not super critical, but I thought I'd just run through them real quick.
Yeah.
We had a 20-yard scrap recycling bin delivered. It was
Very
a
nice.
Big step for us. Cost-wise, like, in terms of the money we get for the scrap, it's probably going to be a little bit less, but it's going to save a lot on labor, which I think more crucially is not necessarily like wasn't having a problem with paying somebody to go deliver it. Like, that's fine. But the disruption in the shop was a real thing. Because that has really real cascading effects on, like, what we can achieve, and tends to have, potentially a multi-day effect on kind of like productivity in the shop if one person is gone for a good portion of the day, or tied up and then gone with this process. Some very small things. Just bought a bunch of small garbage cans and put them all around the shop.
Nice.
I found myself like
walking
a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah. I taped, in quotation mark, mouse pads to workstations at the machines. Like we have those little like block computers, and we'd like laid them down on their sides, and they're about the size of a mouse pad. And everyone was using that as the mouse pad because that's where the mouse goes. Okay. But like because of the surface, the mouse doesn't work very well on it. So I just put cardboard on top, and that works great. Oh. And just like taped it in place.
Very smart.
Because I was annoyed while setting up a machine.
Yeah.
I zip tied the cable for our lathe chuck activation pedal in place. Okay. Because it has this long cable on it, and you'd always start like move it where you wanted it at the beginning of the day, and then through the day it would just like slowly walk until finally you're like reaching for it as you like put a part in. And I was just like, this is silly. Like just zip tie it where it needs to stay. And now it stays.
Nice.
Yeah. So those were some little ones from last week that just didn't carry over, or we didn't have time for.
Yeah, I think these all fall into like the fix what bugs you kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And they are all, it's easy. Like our last episode, I feel like we were sort of hitting the like focus on the big picture.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is another one of those sort of weird dichotomies that I don't really have a good way of articulating how to decide where to focus. But I know from being in the shop day to day, these ones make a huge difference and often get put off and often don't actually take much time to just fix.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know how to
I think the like
speak to that.
The 3S distinction that you made the other day, where it's like fix small things in the 3S, become aware of small things in the 3S.
Yeah.
Kind of like maintain clarity and bring down the noise level in 3S.
Right. Maybe that's it.
I think these kind of all like were in that category, and it's not always like in that 15 minutes to half an hour period that I was doing these things.
Yeah.
I think like these mouse pads, I was like setting up a machine. I was like, this is silly. So it was like on the phone. I was probably on the phone with you and just like taped them up. And I was like, well, I'm doing the one. I might as well do the other three at the same time.
Yeah.
It takes like 5 minutes.
Interesting.
So I think, anyway, I've been finding that distinction to be very helpful, to be like, okay, this is sort of the block where we tackle the fix what bugs you stuff.
Totally.
This is not going to solve the bigger problems in the business.
But it does make them more visible. It does make them more actionable in a funny way.
I think it's saving time it's saving time for everyone, which can then be put towards better things.
For sure. I've been really enjoying the block scheduling thing. Yeah. And I think this sort of falls into the same paradigm. Like something you said kind of stuck with me about, not only is it about like sort of a bit of a pressing, like, okay, I have 15 minutes to get this task done. Let me try to get it done. But it's also about knowing that you have the time set aside for the other tasks later. Yeah. So I sort of feel like similarly, if you set aside time for these very small improvements throughout the day. Yeah. But then you also have time set aside to like think hard about big problems. I find it very crazy making the feeling of going throughout the day with none of that. Yeah. Because you always feel like I need to be doing 10 other things. Mm-hmm. And so you only bring like half of your attention to what you're currently doing, or you stop halfway through to switch tasks because the other thing also, oh, right, I forgot to send that email. Let me jump into that. Yeah. And it makes you much less effective. So I feel like maybe part of the thing is like there's a lot of ways of improving the business, and you just set aside a little bit of time to work on.
Yeah. Each,
and they all feel really good. Yeah. That's something I've also noticed. Like these small things, it's like such a relief often.
Yeah.
Such a payoff for 5 minutes. So I've been working on redesigning our gripper fingers so that they work right off of the 3D printer. Because they have like round bores that are printing horizontally, and so the top of the bore often is a little bit boogery.
I thought you already did that.
I've done it on other ones, so now as we have to reprint them, I've been like actually just taking the time to update them. Gotcha. I've been finding new ways to support different elements that are easy post-process. So like building really thin walls that support some overhang that you just take some like side cutters and just cut them out really quickly. is way easier than like having it be boogery or having it sort of like auto generate the support and then it's in places you don't want it. So like previously I had made some other modifications so that all overhangs were at that 45-degree angle for 3D printing. But that starts to drive geometry that's challenging sometimes. And so this was kind of like I can just draw in a support and clip that out in like 5 seconds. Cool. But more critically, I think the bores that are critical, just having them come right off the machine and they go right into action. Yeah. We had an interesting failure where we pulled the backup fingers and they were damaged because we had already used them. And so I have no idea how that happened. Like they had gone back into the wrong pocket or something. And then the machine sat idle for at least an hour while we printed the new ones. Anyway, so it's interesting as we're getting tighter on machine time, really starting to notice all the ways these things, like things fall apart.
Interesting. So we did it's not that big. We have these 2 whiteboards that have our job boards on them, our job tag organization layout on the front. They're side by side. We happen to have gotten whiteboards that have a whiteboard on the back. The intention is that you can like flip it.
Right.
But because ours are covered in magnets on one side, we can't flip it. So we had initially set them up in a place that was like close to my desk and central in the shop. It's kind of like easy to see, but there wasn't good access to the back of the boards. And the other day, kind of coming out of this discussion of A3 and like how do we actually tackle all of these action items? We need somewhere to keep track of them and visualize them in a way that makes sense. So I moved the boards closer to our break room where we do kind of our discussions and like more like visioning, kind of like A3 process discussions. So the back of these boards is now like at the exit of that. So we can move out there to discuss kind of action items post morning meeting.
Cool.
And then it's also the front of it with the job board is facing our sawing and tooling area. So it's kind of more in the like preparatory zone in our shop. So we're going to try it out. And then kind of the more critical piece of it actually was that on the back, we made an action items list that is like a cost time matrix like we've talked about. I decided to divide it into 3 in each direction. So it's like small, medium,
that's useful,
large amounts of time, small, medium, large amounts of cost. And then that's on one board, and then it flows into the next board, which is our whip board.
Cool.
So, and then there's like
are you using the whip board?
We haven't been, but I think it's not fundamentally because a whip board is a bad idea. I think it's because we haven't made time for it effectively.
Yeah, I've found we have not been using the whip board effectively, and I think it's because we've been trying to force it into a thing that it's not, where like we're putting items on there that are sort of takeaways from these short meetings. And so they're not well strategized items. They're not like, we haven't taken the time of zooming out and going like, okay, what are the critical things for this business moving forward? And like, there's just like, it lives in the realm of like minutia. And it's like, we don't need to whip board those. I think we've just been like trying to manage the easy stuff rather than the important stuff or something like that. So I also put a category on there that's just like a general to-do list that's not like improvement project oriented, so that we're not like mixing that all in one big soup and we just end up picking out like, I need to order this special thread mill that I want to buy because someone said they're cool. That doesn't count, right? Like that's not moving us towards an objective necessarily. Like it's cool, but it's good to know about tooling as someone who uses a lot of it.
And someone does need to order them. So putting them in this list is cool. You can take that off and you can get it ordered. But I think that might be a little bit helpful to have things that are moving us towards a goal and a target in this matrix, and then just a general to-do list of just general to-dos, like, whatever. We got to fix the insulation where it was torn up in this new space. Like, that's not an improvement project necessarily. That's just like something that has to happen. So I think it's going, and I think as we create time, which is we have now as a group decided on a specific time to tackle some of these bigger projects.
Yeah.
I think this is where we'll be going.
Yeah. I'm wondering and thinking about this just live right here. I wonder if it would make sense for us to have 2 or 3 whipboards, which is the opposite of the point of a whipboard. But I think what I struggled with is like we come up with tasks that are the like 5-minute little I don't know, 2-second lean kind of like, you know, tape a piece of cardboard to the top of the computer so it works as a mouse pad or all those things. And it's nice to actually track those because sometimes you're just not in a headspace to like go solve a big problem. And it's nice to just be able to bang out a few of those little ones.
Sure.
And so just tracking those and maybe like referencing that whipboard during your 15-minute 3S'ing or 30-minute 3S'ing, and then having a different whipboard for like what are the big juicy things that are gonna really move this business forward. I just wonder if it would make sense to separate those out, or maybe to have each person has a slot for kind of a few different classifications of projects. And I understand, like, you know, please write in with all your hate mail for having more than one task in process. Like, I don't know, it feels like maybe this is me giving up, but it feels like the reality is that I do more than one thing throughout the day. I think I tend to do more things than I should in one day, but I also know it's not going to be one thing, I think.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get production leveling, to achieve production leveling and low whip as a small business owner, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Our intermediate, I forgot one aspect of that too, was it was having a category or a column that's like next in queue for things that we decide as a group are high priority.
Oh, cool.
That we can like pull out of the general soup.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's going to serve that same purpose, but that was kind of the thinking.
Right.
Anyway, this is completely untested as of yet. We'll come back to it at some point, let you know how it goes.
I received some more tooling, engraving tools and some roughing mills that I'm excited to test out.
Oh, cool.
Part of a project, like we've been having this chatter issue.
Yep.
That I think we've talked about here. So I just ordered an end mill that, anyway, maybe we'll fix it. I'm struggling with, I feel the need in our shop to have a better way of distinguishing between production and testing, because it's all on the same machine. It's really easy to feel like, I think we've talked about this, I feel like I'm getting better at running experiments instead of saying this is the new thing we're going to do,
right,
and then figuring out that it's actually not good. It's like, okay, we're not committing to this method, we're just going to try it. But I think we need a sort of a more explicit method for doing those experiments, because it feels like, I don't know, I guess like it just feels a little muddy, where it's like, because the goal is to integrate it, but so I'm kind of like, well, let me put it in, and if it doesn't work, we'll undo it or something, instead of being like, no, these are like, we are forking this product, right? It's like we have our production tooling and our production code, and now I'm going to make a copy of the whole thing and run this experiment, and then we're going to decide whether the two get merged again. Just trying to become a little bit more methodical about that.
Purposeful, or like,
because I think there's a tendency to feel like, okay, this will solve the problem I'm having. We got to move, like, you know.
The funny thing is, I feel like it's super common too, is like making that fork is like almost zero work.
Right.
And still we often forget to do that, like very critical small step. It's kind of,
and the way I've been doing, which works pretty well, is I just go into my folder where I have production code, and I just add a date to my production code. So like today's date. And I just say like, this was production code on this date. And then I make a new one, and then I just know I can go back to it in a funny way. Like, I don't know. It kind of works.
All it takes. I mean, there's downstream things where it's like, if you make tooling changes and you don't notate that, or track it well, like those things can really bite you. But that initial step of like, if you don't make that fork and you just start making changes on the fly, going back, you can always like track your way back to where you were
sometimes,
hopefully.
Oh,
no, I mean, if you still have the old code,
right? Yes,
you can always be like, okay, this is the tool list that's in this program, like we can remake this versus and here's what we had written down for it, versus being like, well, I made 60 edits in the last 3 hours, right? And I don't remember
how are we doing that exactly? What was the feed rate and all that? It's a bit of a challenge to do it. I don't know. To just treat it as like a totally separate experiment. We're going to see what happens. And this is just for the sake of learning, because it sometimes feels like, it's getting sucked into the mindset of like our job here is production. And anyway.
We've been running more gripper work recently.
Oh, cool.
And we're kind of getting to the point where my employees are starting to set those jobs up. And it definitely has been in the realm of like my personal experiments up to this point.
Right.
And so there's a lot of like, how do we edit this? And I'm like, okay, this one, I know the wording doesn't make sense, but it's this. And that one, make sure you change that one. That one's really important, and it's just kind of like, okay, we need to like figure out how to lock this down and actually put some thought towards the workflow and how we're going to populate it across different part numbers and stuff.
Well, that's the thing I've struggled with a lot is like, let's say we make this change on this part. Now we need to make sure we propagate that change to all the other parts. Like one of the things I want to do is change from an ER11 holder on one of the cutters to a, whatever, this is machining weeds, but into a shrink fit holder. And I need to run the simulation, but then I need to run the simulation in all the programs that we run
to confirm that it clears. And then I need to sort of run a test in all of them.
Probably, or note that change was made and make a note on that setup so that the next time it gets run, that thing gets checked. We don't really have a mechanism for doing that. It's tricky. Like this is dumb because it's such a solvable problem. I'm not sure that tool number 20 in our CNC actually gets used for anything anymore, but it's like challenging enough to go. It's not that challenging. It's like 16 programs I have to go review, which is not a lot. It's just became apparent in the last 3 days, and I've been busy with other things. But I need to open them all up, make sure none of them have tool 20, and then make sure I didn't forget to check anything. And and I'm pretty sure there's another tool in the list that I can replace. Like we have this little
like it's a duplicate,
a little drill mill that was super useful. I used to use it for slotting because you could just plunge straight in and slot across. Did a great job. But now we just drill with a different drill that's already in the machine and already in the tool changer, already being used for something else. So we just make a little hole and then poke a different thing in there. And I want to eliminate it because we're running out of space in our tool changer. And I know there's some programs that we like to make it. It is used in our soft jaw prep program, which we run a couple times, like once a month maybe. And I'm kind of like, where else is that tool used? And if you don't get it, suddenly someone's going to set up the machine and just crash. Because So it's a little scary.
We have sort of the reverse problem where, because we're using a universal set of gripper macro programs, sometimes we'll be running one part and I'll make some tweaks to like try and get it to unload properly or load properly, and then we go to the next part and they're like, well, why is it doing all this extra stuff?
Interesting.
It's not usually like a crash error, but sometimes it's like it's shooting air out, the blasting air out of the wrong vise, or like, why is it doing this extra flip and it's spraying coolant now when it shouldn't be? And you're like, oh yeah, it's because I was tweaking it for this other thing. But
interesting. So are you going to build that back into your universal where each one can have like little tweaks or something that are part specific, but that gets away from the universality of it all?
I don't know. I think eventually what we'll have is a universal template that gets copied. That's a single program. Because what I was running into is, and this again is in the weeds, but it's a file storage problem that everyone could probably relate to. the like set of programs that the gripper system used was 4 programs in addition to your part program.
Yeah.
So for every part you were running, there was just kind of like this program soup of stuff to make sure you got in and out of the machine properly and edited properly.
Yeah.
And so my initial thought was like, if we make that program soup universal, then there's just one of those and we just, pull other programs in. My current thinking now is that we'll have a single, instead of a program soup, we'll have one program that does everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if we make tweaks to it, we can have it live with that part program.
Right.
And they can be a pair. And a pair is easy to track compared to
5.
Like we already almost always have a softjaw file and a part file or 2 for every part. So adding 1 onto that is not like such a big deal, I think. Especially if it gets overwritten and it doesn't live on the machine, it lives with the part.
Right.
So I think that's the kind of the key part is like single point of truth for that becomes the same as for everything else to do with the part versus having a single point of truth in the machine for a universal program and then a single point of truth for the part in our ERP system and them being capable of mismatching.
Yeah, it's something I wonder. There's probably people who have a good answer to this question, so I'd be very curious if anyone wants to write in. The problem of building systems that are readily improved upon, sort of fundamentally can create a lot of it's hard to do that. It's hard to build a system if we want to play around with new tools. To be like, oh, does this roughing mill work better than our old one? That's great, except it's going to be a lot of work to then go test it on every single part we manufacture.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder how people deal with that because it can feel like a lot of inertia where it's like, okay, it works now.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it alone, even though it's not as good as it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a challenge.
It takes a lot of forethought, I think, to design those systems appropriately. Or you make your systems extremely flexible. Like as a job shop, we don't pretend to have a universal tooling system.
I think that's another option. Right.
Yeah. And we just design or we optimize around changing tools, basically.
Right. And then if you're rerunning a job and you just discovered a new tool, maybe you'll reprogram it, but that's not a challenge because it doesn't mean you have to make sure that every other instance is solved for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is tempting, and I think we might have to go that route anyway, where we're changing tools.
Eventually, no matter what, I'm sure. Unless you get to the point where you're big enough that you literally have
like part-specific
machines dedicated to a single part.
We almost are already, because we make so few parts.
Yeah, even at that point, having tool lists that are flexible is kind of key.
Yeah, and like one machine is down and you want to run on another machine. If everything is documented and clear about how you set up that part, that's very different than like, wait, what tools are in this machine that are different than that other machine? And
or even just like a company stops making the tool that you use.
Right.
Like you need to have a system in place for updating as necessary once you run out. And like every time the part comes out.
Don't understand. Like it doesn't feel like that's solved in CAD and CAM. Where I understand why they built it the way they did, but it doesn't feel like we ran into that where someone shipped us a chamfer mill that was very different from the chamfer. I mean, very, very different by 15 thousandths of an inch, but that's very different when you're putting a chamfer on things.
Yeah.
And so then you sort of have to go back through and check that it's instead of like, I wish you could sort of group assign like, hey, this is my new standard tool, and it would sort of propagate, but I understand that also has issues, or you can tell it to propagate, or it could say like, hey, here are all the files where you used that original tool, or something like that would be really handy, but also for you would be insane and overwhelming. If it was like, hey, you've used this tool on like 700 parts, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm not running that.
I mean, I think if it flagged as you brought that program back up, that would be helpful. But
then in reality, we never bring that program back up in my shop unless we're going to make programming tweaks. So unless we built that into our workflow.
But if you change the tool, you would have to bring everything back up and reprogram. So
yes. Yeah. Okay. It's becoming very clear to me that part of the issue is I don't have a clear, like, I'm still in the just utter chaos, essentially. Right? Like, I don't have, I'm just realizing I don't have a list of all of my programs or all of the files that we run in production. That is not a comprehensive list I own. I can come up with it in my head. There's places I can go look for that information.
Yeah.
But that would become a very finite problem of like, here are all the programs. Now let me go through them.
Right. Like you could have a spreadsheet of like programs. And
here are all the parts we make.
Yeah.
Here's where those files live.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway.
Speaking of tools, we updated our warm-up program to put tool 2 in the spindle at the beginning of the warm-up, because oftentimes our programs finish with the probe in the spindle. So we'll like run the part, it finishes with the probe.
Then it alarms out because it can't spin it.
Or a couple of my machines don't have the alarm set up.
Oh.
So you could spin it up.
Oh.
Which would be bad.
That's pretty simple in the tool table.
I'm sure it is. I just haven't done it.
Okay, yeah. You just set the max RPM to 0 or to
2,
a very low number. Yeah.
Anyway, so that was a small change, but
very nice.
Hopefully we'll avoid some expensive errors.
Did you see
I also updated it to finish with the table in front of the door.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was just some random program that someone gave me, and I was like, cool, a warm-up program. Here we go. But it always finishes with the table at the far end, like as far away from the operator as is possible.
Like machine 0 probably, right?
Yeah, machine 0.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, then go to manual, turn up the feed rates, manual it back. I'm going to twiddle my thumbs.
Oh, interesting.
It was not a big deal, but
I
it's one of those things
put a program
just like silly.
that we actually use quite a bit. I wrote a program that is basically a safe recovery and bring the table to the door. And it like retracts the spindle without spinning it, which is useful for gripper work. And then like zeros the A axis and then brings the whole thing to the door. And we use it a lot because sometimes you just want the table at the door and the rest doesn't matter. But also if you like crash something or something is not where it should, you can always call. I can't think of a scenario where you can't call that program and have it get you out of trouble.
That's cool. I want that.
Yeah, I will send it to you. Did you try the tool setter program I sent your way?
Not yet.
Cool. I'm curious what you think or what we can improve. We're doing some more laser marking work for someone.
Oh, yeah.
And took all of Shigio's recommendations for SMED for die changes.
Every single one.
Every single one. This is like the perfect
comprehensive SMED setup.
Yeah. No. But just standardizing the lasering height.
Oh, yeah.
But it causes an issue. So basically, for those who don't know, if you're laser etching stuff, you need the laser to be focused, like focusing a camera on a particular distance from the lens. And so if every part is a different height, which it is, then you have to be refocusing your laser, which adds time and inaccuracy if you don't do it well. So we've standardized it around 100 millimeter because we make small parts, 100 millimeter plane from the surface.
And so you like 3D printing spacers?
So that's the thing. I'm wondering if I should go through and 3D print some height or aluminum blocks that are a certain height. So that, because otherwise the 3D printer takes a long time to make the part. Because we're just doing like an extra 70 millimeters of nothing.
Oh, totally.
So
this is not SMED, but it is functional in our shop where we have a very wide range of part sizes.
Yeah.
Part heights. We have a spacer that is the focal length, and so you put it against the housing on the lens. Okay. And then you just bring it down till it touches your part and you pull it out.
Interesting. And you made that?
Uriel made it. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's not SMED.
Right.
But it does work.
Those are working is good. Well, so the funny thing is what I did is
it sort of is. You're taking the guest check out of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's just instead of we're adjusting.
Standardizing would be faster, but would introduce issues for you.
Yeah.
And for me. Yeah. I like that. Interesting. I'll have to look at that. That might be a good approach for now. I mean, the thing for us is like we do just do a ton of the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And there's like 4 of those things.
Maybe so what would be good is just to get like 1 millimeter blocks.
Yeah.
And you stack you get within a millimeter and then you bring it into perfect focus.
Oh. I was thinking I just want some blocks that I drop on the table, like a 50 millimeter block and a 75 millimeter block. And then I just 3D print the remainder that is part specific on top of that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But if you wanted to avoid 3D printing completely.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Interesting. The 3D printing is really nice because you end up with a cradle that is very error resistant.
Sure.
I guess. Yeah. But that's a good thought.
Let's see. We finally finished our new rolling stock rack.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so one of the many motivations for moving was the chaos of our stock storage and sawing area at our old shop because it was space constrained. So now we kind of came up with a system where we built an A-frame rack and incoming stock, which is always full lengths, comes in and goes like loads directly with the forklift horizontally. And the thought is that we will put uncut material on that side, tag it with job numbers so we know where it goes. And then on the other side of the A-frame is vertical storage where remnants will go and just be divided by material type and shape.
Yeah.
And it's all the idea is that it's in a space where we can do all the loading onto the saw with the forklift so that we're not having to do a lot of hand loading of the heavy stuff.
Smart.
So yeah, we actually finished most of it. Quorum built the whole thing.
Nice.
Finished most of it like 2 weeks ago, and we've been waiting on casters for like 3 weeks. They finally came yesterday. So,
very nice.
Yeah, it's big.
Why did you want it to roll? To be able to clean under it or something, or do you
no, just because like
frequently,
just to get it out of the way. If it's
okay
in the space in a way that we don't like, we can roll it next to the forklift to get have just better walkability basically.
And what's your thought on casters versus building it for like a pallet jack or something?
It's just kind of big to get effective pickup, I think, on a pallet jack.
That makes sense. And like you don't want to have to sort of wheel it with like the wheels that just go one way. Yeah.
So like now we have rotating casters on all 4 corners. Like you can really kind of put it wherever you want.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Very nice. I 3D printed some laser fixture clamps.
Sorry, backing up.
Yeah.
The reason that we did that is because at our old shop, incoming stock and remnant stock would sometimes get mixed.
Okay.
And it was so like the underlying motivation for this was safety, being able to load and unload with a forklift instead of by hand, and having a clear delineation of like what material is going where and what is yet to be used and for a queued job and what's just kind of around.
Interesting. So if you go to make a job that you're pulling from remnants, does that bar then get moved to somewhere else, or does it get tagged, or what would be
I'm not exactly sure yet
the workflow?
We have
like if in programming I could imagine you walking over and being like, okay, we'll use this.
Yeah, we haven't had a good group discussion about what that use case is going to be yet.
Yeah,
but that seems intuitive, so we'll kind of take it as it goes.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
I have to say something I've been noticing the need for more and more is I think it is easy to look at when you're running production or work of any kind, looking at the work product that the customer is paying for as the only thing that needs to sort of be systemized in a funny way. And so you're like, oh, we have a system for that and we ship it like this and whatever. But then everything that's supporting that, even if they're like only second order items, just gets left out. And Like, I don't, we just had this conversation yesterday. Like, we've been Kanbaning more and more like production items around the shop, like the 3D printed fixtures, the 3D printed gripper fingers, like just anything that might wear out or break that then we use for production, like, is really critical.
Yeah.
And having a system for exactly how you do it. Like, for 2 years, we existed in a state where making soft jaws was not really thought of as a production process of like, here is the code, here is the, like, everything is laid out. In fact, still, we don't have soft jaw code on the like associated with each part. So every time we have to make new soft jaws, I have to go look for, like, open up that file in Fusion, re-export it, which is kind of silly. Yeah. Like, that is a thing that, like, if we damage it for whatever reason and have to make a new stuff, we are dead in the water. So it's kind of funny. It's like all those things, the second you sort of just codify them and it's like, this isn't the SOP for that thing, you're like, oh, great. Nice.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you though.
No, this is pretty small. Laser fixture clamps. So just a way of clamping. We were hot gluing the fixtures to the laser. Oh. Because this is the third job we've done with the laser for a customer. So we don't do it frequently. We don't change it over.
Yeah.
It's sort of something we started doing as an experiment to see what, if people wanted it, what we could do with it, all that.
Yeah.
And so, they're just little 3D printed fixtures, and they have a long, like what's it called, like a
toe clamp.
Yeah, but like where it has a long slot in it, so you don't really have to unscrew the screw all the way to disengage it.
Yeah. Matt Blackwell, Patreon subscriber
and friend,
makes some very nice laser fixture stuff.
Yeah.
We don't clamp anything down. We just make stops and slide them to a stop.
Yeah, so our current fixture, this was a happy accident, was too tight. And then it gets you perfect positioning, whereas previously we've had a few thou of slop. But if you're doing stuff where the registration is important or really close to the edges, you can see a few thousandths of rotation or whatever. Yeah. So this one, like the compliance of the plastic fixture, but it means that you're sort of like yanking it out of, yanking is probably an overstatement, but it wouldn't stay in place.
Yeah.
So it needed to be clamped.
Interesting. Cool. Huh. We updated our QC process after that little hiccup. Multiple hiccups. Which was really just standardizing it slightly. So we'd had like this tray that was like, here's where parts go after coming out of the machine before going on the finished parts tray.
Sure.
And like, we'll check them here. But we didn't have a standard for how many to check, because we were kind of like, well, it depends on the part. We'll have to decide. Turns out that was a bad idea, and we should have just standardized it. So what we did was kind of looked at the biggest parts that we regularly run and divided our tray by that many.
Oh, cool.
And we're like, we'll check this many. We'll check every this many. If we need to check more, we can always check more.
Right.
But this is sort of our minimum. And then there's going to be some parts that don't really fit within that. We occasionally do bigger stuff, and we'll figure out how to handle that. But
so this is like a grid that you lay the parts out on, and then you go, okay, out of when this grid is full, we're going to check 5 or something like that.
Check everything on the grid. Basically, it's just every 4 parts. So
so you just go down the column?
You just fill up the tray, and then once they're full, you check them and move them to the next. Move them to the finished parts tray.
Sorry, when you're unloading the machine,
yes,
you're taking 1 out of every 4 and putting it on that tray, or you're putting all of them on the tray and then only checking a portion of what's on the tray?
We tend to make 1 part at a time. So we take 1 part out, put it on the tray. Next cycle, take 1 part out, put it on the tray.
Right.
Next cycle, 1 part.
And
next
then
cycle, 1 part.
When are you checking?
After the tray's full, at 4 parts.
And you're checking all 4, or you're checking 1?
Generally, we would just check the last one.
Interesting.
And then if there's issues, we have them numbered, so we could kind of go back and see where it started.
Gotcha. So the tray holds 4 parts.
Yes.
I see. And you fill it up, and then you check the last one.
Yeah.
And then you move them all to a
finished parts tray. Yeah. And we also moved that whole tray to the top of the workstation, so it's not easy to like visually skip. It's like the natural place where you'd want to set down a part, regardless.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps, and we're going to keep kind of reviewing this and see what issues come up.
That's cool.
It's still like in the statistical checking sort of model.
It is. That would be, I mean, the alternative to that is 100% QC, which is heavily reliant on Pokeyoke fixtures that are checking.
Yeah.
Which I cannot imagine how you're going to do that economically.
No.
I wouldn't write it off. Like, maybe the cost of probing on your machine is like super worthwhile. And maybe you'll figure that out at some point.
Yeah, in-process inspection.
Yeah, where it just checks them.
Yeah.
And then every single one has been inspected. I've thought about that, but that feels like a big cost to me. And maybe I'm wrong. I
don't know if the cost is so high. I think given my skill set, the cost to implement might be high. Interesting. I don't know if the long run cost would be high in our environment.
Yeah. Right. I feel like you have longer runtime stuff.
Generally,
so the proportion. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. So we got in PETG CF filament for our 3D printer.
Yeah.
I am loving it.
Nice.
It is, instead of like $24 for a kilogram of PLA, it's like $34 for a kilogram, which is within striking distance, feels like.
Yeah.
Like some filaments are like $100 a roll, which I don't know.
Yeah.
Just feels expensive. It also goes in the I forget what it's called. Anyway, the filament changer on the on the Bamboo 3D printers. So that's nice. Some of their filaments, which I didn't realize, are not compatible because they're too stiff or brittle or something.
Huh.
And so this one is compatible. It's not too much more expensive. The PETG seems to hold up in the coolant substantially better than PLA.
I had a bunch of people reach out after my tool tag cracking thing. Yeah. And a bunch of folks said that PETG handles the coolant much better.
Yeah, I think it handles coolant and it is more like flexible.
Yeah.
Less brittle. So that's been great. We're using it across a lot of tooling. It's a nice mix of durability and stiffness. And also the carbon fiber helps it 3D print nicely. Like the objects are just like nice.
Interesting.
Which is kind of cool. Huh. Yeah. It's less stringy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's been a success so far.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if they've been in use long enough to say like, all right, this is like the answer. Yeah. So I might find a new problem with them. But for now, we've been pretty happy with them.
Huh, cool. So speaking of lasering and people having too much to do, when we got the laser, we're like, oh, cool. We'll laser mark all of our jaws after we're done with the job so we know what parts they were for.
Yeah.
And we can reuse them. It turned out that was just adding a big load to Ariel, who does our laser marking.
Okay.
And she would end up having to batch them. There'd be this like long queue of things and like trying to find time to do them. And so we sat down and we were kind of like, what's the solution to this? And it was like, well, they go in the machine already. We should just be engraving them in the machine. This is silly that we're not. That makes a
lot of sense.
It's like basically no extra time, no extra handling.
Yeah, it's like maybe a minute. Maybe.
Yeah. So I finally updated the mill cam template with sketches that have all the basic information there. You just fill in with the part number.
Huh. What is the basic information?
Like jaw one of two, jaw 2 of 2, left hand, right hand.
Gotcha.
Part number.
Oh, nice.
And in the different orientations that the jaw could be placed.
Okay.
So like it always reads right.
Yep.
Depending on how it's put in. And then I just made like the engraving operation so it was like preset, ready to go.
That's awesome.
No added friction for me to be like, I'm in a hurry. I'm not going to do that.
Very cool. So is it pointed at a sketch and it will just look at all the text in it and engrave it? Or do you have to go in and select?
No, the first.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Is that the trace?
No, it's just 2D contour.
2D contour, and you just point it at a sketch.
Yeah. And then make it no, it's not like compensating left or right centered.
Okay.
And
I'm going to have to ask you about that.
No lead-ins or lead-outs, so it'll make it look funny.
Right. Yeah. So it just plunges straight down.
And no keep tool down. To anybody who's wondering.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I might have that issue on my current product. I was like, what is that gouging?
Yeah.
It might be that. But it's only in the U, which is weird.
It's unpredictable where it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. All of the like cam stuff, it does so much of the work for you, which is nice 99% of the time. Yeah. And then sometimes you're just like, I just want like ultimate control over this tool path.
Uh-huh.
To anyone listening on the Fusion team, or if you know someone on the Fusion team, I'm sure there's a reason this doesn't exist. I would love a cam sketch tool where I can draw in cam, not in CAD.
Didn't they release that? I feel like someone was talking about it.
If they did, I am behind the times, which is very likely. So
maybe they didn't, but
that's awesome if they did, and if they didn't, I want it. I'm always jumping back and forth between the two. And like often I'm drawing sketches that I know I will never use for construction. They're only to drive tool paths off of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because you get really in the weeds nitpicky with your tool paths.
Yeah, especially like corner rounding up to another wall. You can't go all the way, and you sort of want to do this clean sweep out, whatever. This is like super in the weeds. So like I've now learned, well, a few hard lessons learned, but this was not a hard lesson. I draw all those sketches in the part. Like when I design a buckle, once I move to production, I go draw those tool paths in the original part file, so that if I ever redo how I'm doing the tool holding, I don't have to go remake all those sketches.
Oh, that's smart.
The hard lesson learned was the last week I was up till 5 a.m. trying to get this thing done. Well, first 2 a.m. and then 5 because it lost a body because I had pointed, I think the cause was I had pointed the derive function. We are deep in the weeds here. I pointed the derive function at the body, not at the parent component. And then it had it sort of glitched out because I made a change. And so I had to go redo some of the extrude functions. And I think it created a new body that the computer wasn't like, that is the same body, just new. It was like, that is entirely new. And I have no idea what I'm meant to be looking at.
Huh.
It took me 5 hours of work to... Ugh. It was annoying. But now that is part of the SOP, is essentially how to create derived bodies. And that should fix a lot of the problems. I think I've been underestimating how nitpicky you should be about what to select in CAD and CAM. What are you machining a body for the thing the CAM setup is looking at, or are you machining a component? And you're often better off pointing it at a component, I think, because that brings in all the sketches and everything, and the body does not.
Interesting.
So it's just the body.
I don't actually use Fusion yet, so this is a little outside my lexicon.
That and probably 90% of our listeners.
Yes. Sorry. Last on my list is we ordered... Well, I'll back up to the problem.
Ooh, good catch.
There's a not uncommon occurrence where someone is setting up a machine and they walk over to me and they say, "Is this tool good?" And I squint real hard and say, I think that'll pass.
And that's to do with wear or the setup?
Wear.
Okay, gotcha.
And I was like, this is just silly. So I ordered a digital microscope for tool inspection. I started out with the cheapo, whatever, $200 or $150 Amazon one.
Okay.
Mind blowing. The tools that I was passing were
beat up,
roached. Yeah.
Okay.
For what we're doing, still making most of the time good parts, but very. Everyone was like, "Uh-oh, we're gonna have to spend so much money on tooling."
Interesting.
But I think we'll figure out kind of where our wear limits are for what makes okay parts and what doesn't. But anyway, hopefully taking that out of my hands into something that can be a more...
I don't understand how that solves the problem. There are two problems. One is that they're coming to ask you.
Yes.
And the other is when to switch tools.
Sure.
Due to wear.
I think it's going to be much less subjective at this point. That is chipped.
Okay. So you're saying if it's chipped... we're done.
Before it was like, okay, it's a little shiny. Is it
right?
How
you can't
shiny?
See what it is.
Like, okay, go ask Devin if this is an acceptable level of shiny. Now it's like, is that sharp? No, it's cratered.
So I think this was on the Business of Machining years ago. They mentioned this, but basically 3D printing blocks that got different diameter tools to the right focal height.
Oh, that makes sense.
Which I feel like might be useful.
Huh? Yeah, that'd be cool.
Or because you're in a BT30, could you make one for the BT30 to always inspect a tool? Is it normally in a holder? Probably, right? Like comes out of the machine, or is it like I'm about to set it up from the drawer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. Yeah.
No, there's still definitely the question of like what our standard is, but I think it's much less like subjective at this point.
Right. And at this point you can start to build that standard because you can actually see
exactly
what you're looking at. It's like it is chipped.
Yeah.
Okay. When it's chipped, no.
Yeah.
Wear seems a little more troublesome.
Yeah.
But I guess now you can figure that out.
Well, the thing is, wear is actually a bunch of small chips. That's the thing.
There's also built-up edge, but
there's also built-up edge. But we're looking at these things where we're like, okay, that to the naked eye, this looks very sharp. And then you look at it under the microscope, and you're like, well, it's not sharp anymore.
So if you follow Robin Renzetti, you know that tools don't come sharp.
Sure. Well, but we looked at a new tool and we were like, okay, that's what sharp looks like.
Right. Okay.
This does not look the same anymore.
Yeah. This is the X-Acto knife problem.
Yes, exactly.
Happens slowly.
Yeah.
You forget how good it was. So 2 quick ones for me. We've started using the time on the ferry to do our meetings.
Oh, because you ride the ferry together.
We often do.
Yeah.
I don't think we don't always. Like this morning, I came in very early, so didn't. But when we are, we're just meeting, and there's always stuff to meet about.
Oh, great. Do you pay him for that time?
I do, and that's backing out to the problem. The problem is that the ferry ride is long, and like just eating that time is a bummer, and so you can leave the shop early. And for me as the business owner,
did you pay him for that time before?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's a moot point for me as the business owner because it's like all time I'm working.
Yeah.
But for any employee, the commute is not compensated, but also not a moot point.
Yeah.
And so just getting people more hours in the day.
Oh, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
You don't have to meet during production time. And
exactly. So we show up to the shop and we're just like ready to hit the ground running. On the way home yesterday, we went through like everything we need to do to launch this new product. I'm sure we missed a few things, but it was like an hour-long meeting, which we never do.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, we have a lot of work to do. But this was just like, all right, cool. Next station. What all do we need to do here?
You used to take different ferries, right? Didn't he take the Edmonds
often
ferry?
I was trying to sort of respect his time of like he's not at work yet in a funny way, right? Of like you're listening to something, I don't want to assume that you want to talk about work.
Yeah.
But I think it's
that's
easier.
real. I went on a business trip, quote unquote, with an employer at one point where we were going to make some modifications to a piece of equipment in the field.
Yeah.
And so I'd be like welding on this thing all day. And then we were done, and he just wanted to keep talking about work. And I was kind of like, I like talking about work, but like, I'm done for today. Yeah,
or pay me, or I actually don't want to. I'm home, except we're not home.
Exactly. Yeah.
Last is in the Toyota Kata, they talked about good target condition time horizons.
Yep.
So like, how far out should you be? How long should it take to achieve a target condition that you've set?
Or to be able to know an answer yes or no whether you are doing is working.
Yeah, like how long should this project be before we sort of recheck in or something like that? And I, along with that ferry ride, I'm just really seeing that our time horizons are too ambiguous, like too long. It's sort of like there's an assumption that everyone's doing work at a pace that is good.
Yeah.
And so we'll be done whenever we're done. And it's not actually helpful.
Yeah.
And the reason I did it is because it was clear to me that the whole team didn't have clear ideas about, if I'm not running production, what should I be doing? Mm-hmm. It's sort of like everyone knows there's a lot to do, but unless you have a list, it's sort of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so this was sort of to avoid that problem of just like, because we have a ton of stuff to tackle before this launch. And it's like, all right, we're going to be busy. Like, let's go. Yeah. So just shortening up those time horizons, those like those set points of like, all right, we have a goal at, 3 weeks out or 2 weeks out where this all needs to be done.
Yeah.
That makes it a lot more real and is kind of more fun than just this ongoing, endless sort of march toward, I don't know what, can become a little monotonous.
Yeah. It's kind of like that crisis mentality that we were talking about a few weeks ago.
Yeah. And this is sort of like build that in and don't treat it as a stressful crisis, but just a like schedule to stick to.
Yeah.
And then also it gives you the ability, you've essentially set a target condition of we should be done by this date.
Yeah.
And so then you can also say, well, why weren't we done by this date? And how do we set better goals next time instead of just an endless...
we're late again.
Yeah, and we don't know why, and we don't actually know we're late because we didn't say when late was, but we all feel that we took a long... I don't know,
Yeah.
So.
Totally. Cool. Well, we just hit 1 hour.
Oh, God.
We're both late for work.
We really are.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. We love the feedback. We love the discussion. Hopefully, you are all enjoying our extreme geekery, because we really are.
Our extreme degree?
Geekery,
yes. Yeah. For sure.
You can find me on Instagram at lichen_MFG, on the web at lichenprecision.com. We have a Patreon. Check it out.
Patronize us
if you think this is fantastic and want to keep hearing it.
Yes. And you can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg.com on the internet, and the podcast at Incremental CI on Instagram. Drop us a line. Let us know what you think. Tell us what we're doing wrong or right. And catch you guys next week.
Catch you later.